So welcome to Francis Alÿs exhibition called Richochetes, which will be open until the end of March. This is a major solo exhibition of Francis Alÿs in Portugal, and the first major show he's having in Portugal. He is a Belgian artist born in 1959, and he's been living in Mexico since 1986. What's very incredible about Francis Alÿs' work is that he hasn't been trained as an artist in the traditional sense. He's been really trained and learned art through living and experiencing the city. He was initially trained as an architect and an urbanist, and he came to discover art and being kind of immersed into making art while living in Mexico City. And the defining principle of his art is that it's defined by the idea of action more than objects. One of the key work he made when he started making art was to push an ice block through the cities, through the streets of Mexico for 9 hours until this ice block completely melted on the floor. So you can see that at the core of his practice was more about the action and the performing act of making rather than producing objects. The center of this exhibition is a very, very ambitious body of work called the Children's Games. It's a body of work that Francis Alÿs has started in the late 90s. He started in 1999. And what we get to see here for the very first time is one of the kind of most expensive and largest series of this work spread across the gallery. The show is divided in two moments. One is about the children's games, which you get to see across the beginning of the show. It's this kind of immersive experience across screens of children's games that have been shot around the world. So you're traveling through time and space in Hong Kong, in Afghanistan, in London, in different parts of the world, and really get to grasp the universality and the ingenuity of children's games. Now you might want to ask, what's specific about those children's games? The reason why Francis Alÿs is interested in those games is that they are a way of rethinking our relationship with the public space and with the city. You will notice those games are not shot in playgrounds, and they often don't use a lot of props. They're very simple, and they are often using the environment, the urbanscape, as a kind of tool, as a kind of device to think about the rules of the games. They're a bit of often a metaphor of our society through the children's eyes. The second part of the show is a kind of on the other side of the children's games. It shows animation works that Francis Alÿs has been doing in parallel to filming children's games. They're very simple black and white animation of legs swinging across the top of the staircase leading to the second gallery. There's a really kind of large timeline of archive showing you the history of games across centuries in all the continents, and that is giving you a more kind of historical depth to the idea of the children's games. And the exhibition ends with a beautiful installation called of a painting that is referring to the game of hide and seek. And the painting is hung on the corner in a room where you have to kind of get really close to the painting to see what the scene is representing. It's a bit like a counterpoint to this kind of lively tornado of moving image in the first gallery. The playrooms at the end of the exhibition is now handing it over to you to play and to interact with the theme of the exhibition. It's really handing over the agency to the viewer to experience this kind of collective energy, collective consciousness of children's games. Kind of really important aspect about this show is the way it begins. It starts with a painting of eyes, a painting of eyes that is inspired by the photograph that Francis Alÿs took in Iraq in a refugee camp. And it was inspired by the photograph of children that were looking at his camera. Now those eyes, as you see them in the show, are surrounded by gold leaf. And on this gold leaf, you will see your reflection. And the idea of the show is about the inverted gaze. It's about looking at children playing, but it's also about the gaze of those children looking back at you, and the psychological responsibility of us looking at those children and what it means, because a lot of those games are shot in zones of conflict, of social unrest. They are going through our recent history of major events, from the war in Afghanistan to the COVID-19 pandemic. So they're really capturing a moment of our time and looking at those kind of marginalized gestures in our public sphere.